You might notice I have a separate kit here. This is just for my soldering equipment and the things that I use when I'm soldering. You're going to need to learn how to use a soldering iron, which is not very hard, and there are plenty of videos on the line about how to do that. But a good kit like this, I got this one at Harbor Freight for about $15, but it keeps everything in there and keeps it all together. Here are a few items that are in my soldering kit. The first thing is a soldering iron. Again, just like the electrical tape we talked about earlier, do not get a cheap one. This one costs a couple bucks, like at Fry's or Radio Shack. Well, let me trust you, it is not worth it. It's already bent. I probably used this thing a few hours. Anyway, take it, throw it in the trash. Get a welder, get a good brand. Something, you know, it shouldn't be real expensive for your first iron, but hey, you know, get something with at least a good brand. Something that heats up pretty fast. By all means, you're going to need a nice soldering station eventually, but for your first kit, they also make cordless ones that run off of butane. Look for the Weller brand. That's a good brand of soldering iron. This is a soldering station, which you're going to need to hold the soldering iron on, because you can't just leave a hot iron laying around everywhere. Trust me, it is hot from the point, the tip, all the way back, and it will burn you, so please be careful by all means with that. Inside the soldering station, you'll find a sponge. Now, a lot of guys do not use the sponge correctly, but it's a very important tool for the soldering kit. Make sure and wet the sponge, and do not wipe the soldering iron on the sponge, but instead stab it. You want to keep that soldering iron tip tinned at all times. So get you something like this. Again, this is cheap. It goes at Radio Shack, $120. You can get one of these. Next thing I want to talk about is the solder. Now, there's a lot of discussion sometimes on what solder to use, and I'm not going to get too technical with you, but this is the lead on a capacitor. Your solder should be about the same width as that. So if you can remember that, or if you take a capacitor with you, you'll go and they'll have 4 or 5 different brands. The solder that works best, at least in my opinion, you don't want to get that big thick solder. It's not made for what we do in arcade repair. Get one that's about the same thickness as the lead on the capacitor, and that'll make things a lot easier for you. One spool of this should last you a year or two, depends on how much you solder. Another thing that you're going to need is, after you have soldered and done, is a pair of Nippy Cutters. Now, these are kind of like pliers or wire cutters, except they're very small. They're just called Nippy. That's what Radio Shack calls them, is Nippy Cutters. Some people, you don't want to use this for everything. A great way to ruin these is by trying to cut too much. But like those capacitors, once you pull them through, you can clip those really good. You can also get in tight places. You can cut off like zip ties and stuff that are holding cables together without damaging a lot of things. So a great pair of a good tool for about $5 or $6, pair of Nippy Cutters. Go to Radio Shack and ask them. They'll tell you they'll show you exactly what to get. Also, in your soldering kit, you need to have some brushes. And these kind of brushes, I usually have 2 different kinds. One would be like a wire brush for cleaning, especially like the edge connectors on boards and stuff. And then also have a soft brittle brush, kind of like a big toothbrush, where you can get up in areas and different areas that you want to clean like that without getting too tough. So be careful with the hard brush, what you might scrape off, or you don't want to ruin a trace or anything. But a combination of both is good. But before you can ever solder, a lot of times you have to take out the item or desolder the original parts that you're replacing. So there's a couple ways to do that. The more that I work on arcade games, the more I like to use what's called solder wick, or as this one's labeled, desoldering braid. Again, you can get this at Radio Shack, or you can order it from electronic places online. It's exactly what it says. It looks like a metal braid, and as you put the soldering iron on there and the solder, it'll actually suck the solder right up, right into there. And this is a great tool to use. Another good tool to have in your toolbox would be a desoldering iron. A desoldering iron, you can get at Radio Shack. Again, it's under $10, and what it actually does is You heat it up, and then you push this and suck up the old solder. A lot of people use just a regular soldering iron and one of these bulbs. You'll probably see those when you go shopping. But anyway, that's probably not every tool that you're going to need, but it sure give you a good start. And by all means, email or ask us any questions.